Hi, so I'm arguing for my rebuttal to close Guantanamo Bay. My opponent is for it, and he's for it for apparently our visual human rights as to what we can see and what we can monitor about what's going on in Guantanamo Bay. Um, Human rights itself is defined as justifiable rights for every person, which is those inalienable rights as to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which apply to these men that are. It automatically applies to these men, being that they may not be American citizens, but they do fall under our jurisdiction and our laws because we are the ones keeping them in a hole. So he talks a lot about us being able to send the press in. And while it's good that we know what's going on, I think he forgets that there's a serious harm to being able to send the press in, and which is that we, as American taxpayers, are the ones that are paying for this. It's not like the press, like they pay their own fee to get to Cuba. We pay for their flight to Cuba, and then the helicopter that takes them to the specific area, and then for their room and board and everything like that. It's coming out of our pockets. So there is a harm to this. He talks a lot about dark sites and how if we were to send the men to other areas, they wouldn't come to America, they would go to dark sites. And while it was part of Obama's plan to send them out to other countries, I feel like we could, what's the word? Re re-engineer this plan as to where they would be here kept in American security prisons. We do house El Chapo here, so why not hold the man that helped plan 9/11? He did try to hurt us, so might as well keep him under a little bit of a control, as opposed to the other men who are under mistaken identity and things like that that we're just holding here because we're not totally sure what they're doing, so might as well keep them under lock and key for a while. Um, Human rights. He talks about how moving them would hurt human rights. I think keeping them here is really hurting human rights. Each country has their own view on human rights. I think ours is probably the strictest, which isn't a bad thing. And it, we do have a view on torture and that it's not a good thing, but our new president does talk about applying some of these techniques to the men in order to get them to talk. I'm not sure what these men would exactly talk about, as they have been in captivity since 2002. A lot of them since after 9/11, so they really haven't had a lot of contact with the outside world, so I really don't know what they would tell us. Maybe the newer ones that have just been here a few years, possibly. But as these men were a lot of Al-Qaeda fighters, and we're dealing with ISIS now, which is a little bit different, not really. I don't know how much information these men could really be giving us that we're holding them here. I do believe they need to be tried, even though my opponent seems to think that that's not going to happen because under the Fifth Amendment, we technically are allowed to keep these men here without trying them for an actual crime because it's if they're a threat to public danger. My opponent, however, forgets that here in America we do house men that are a threat to public danger, are rapists and drunk drivers and murderers and things like that not a threat to us. I My opponent and I have argued that they may not be the same crimes as terrorism, but they still are a threat to humanity and to our citizens here in the United States. So why aren't they being sent to Guantanamo Bay and treated that way instead of being housed here in prison yards and then being released after, I don't know, 3 months in some cases? So I think he forgets that there's various ways that we can harm our citizens, not only just by terrorist acts, which happen, well, quite often more than others, but not quite as big as 9/11 in the last few years. Okay. So, he talks about that we don't really need to change what we are doing. I believe what we're doing is we're stalling in a way, kind of. We're keeping these men here because we believe they know something, we believe they're up to something, so we're just going to keep them here, and we're going to continue to pay for them to stay here, which is a portion my opponent refused to. Basically, he kind of just ignored the fact that while it is against the human rights violations and things like that, it is an issue that we have to pay for these things, that their $3 million fiber optic cables so that they would have internet access is coming out of our pockets. He also talks about bringing in third parties to monitor what is going on. This goes under the harm I mentioned earlier about how we pay for these people to get there. I do believe when my opponent talks about these dark sites, he himself isn't very sure about where they're going to. While this is a human rights issue, it shouldn't be an issue if we repatriate these men and send them back to their home countries to be dealt with. Well, I don't believe in the death penalty. I think this is, while that is a human rights issue in its own, I think it would be more. I'm a little lost in my notes here, sorry. Okay, so basically, I think while the human rights issue is the biggest issue, and it is the issue I personally am addressing myself, I think my opponent forgets all the aspects that go along with the human rights issue. He wants human rights groups to be there to be able to monitor what's going on and be able to see what's going on and create kind of like I forget the word. Shit. Anyway, Guantanamo Bay is a human rights issue with or without the factor that we would be sending these men to dark sites. I think with the Obama plan as a good basis, we would be able to restructure this plan in a way that we could find a way to bring them to America and close the prison down itself and save ourselves more money just from housing them there, housing the men there, sending press there, and things like that. So if we restructured the plan as to bringing them here and housing them here in prisons like where we do keep El Chapo and Charles Manson's been here for some odd years, I think we would be perfectly capable as to handling them in our own country, regardless of the safety to America, because if we keep Charles Manson in a prison here, and he was a great threat to a great public danger, I think these men who haven't enacted any danger themselves would be fine here. Thank you.